Welcome to the Cabin Culture Podcast, where we spend a little more time diving deeper into all the fun parts of cabin culture. I like to think of this as both the material and imagined expressions of how cabin lovers, dwellers, builders, and designers wish to live a more simple and authentic life. On this episode, we're talking to Misty Kincaid of Water's Edge at Stanley Creek. She shares about their journey with their log cabin in Blue Ridge, Georgia, including how they bought it while living in Alaska, using a rental management company, and the many requirements they had to even get listed, hosting remotely, and different ways to market. Plus, she shares 3 tips for the mindset, knowledge, and skills that you need to grow on Instagram. Let's do it. Hi.
Hi.
It's so funny when you talk to people only on social media, you lose the nuances of communication and personality.
Oh, yeah.
You know, just expression and tone, but also accent.
Yes, I can't hide it.
No, but I mean, I live in North Carolina, so it's a very familiar, comforting accent.
I was watching some of I didn't even realize the Big Dog Little Bed, and I was watching some of your videos, and Hillsboro, my sister lives in Hillsboro.
North Carolina?
Mhm.
Who's your sister?
Leah Chapman. They've been there for about 6 years.
Because we live right downtown. My husband is on
I
the Board of
didn't-
Adjustments. He's the chair of the
Oh
Board
my
of
gosh.
Adjustments. He worked at the local preschool for 16 years,
That's
so he
awesome.
knows everybody in town.
That's awesome. We love downtown Hillsboro.
Oh my God, it's so cute.
We love it.
We lived slightly outside of downtown, and then when interest rates were super high, because there's so few houses
Ooh,
downtown, when interest
yeah.
rates were super high, I mean, I hate that I have a high interest rate, but it meant that we could actually buy it and weren't
Yeah.
like outbid by like 20 people.
Yeah.
So we jumped on it and moved downtown.
Well,
And
so
I love it.
that's a cool place. It's a really cool place. So I was like, "Oh my gosh." And then I just didn't realize, at first, like when you see Cozy Rock, you're like, I just assume you're like, you live in Maine. And then I saw
I
you had
know,
a
everyone
cabin
does.
you have a cabin in Boone too, right?
Yeah.
So like we
That was our first
we
cabin.
grew up going skiing at Sugar Mountain.
But it's the same thing for you.
Yeah.
Because you live in Alaska, but your cabin's in Georgia, but people probably associate you way more with Georgia,
Yeah.
at least people on the internet.
It's interesting. It's tricky with Instagram because you don't want to confuse people, and people be like, "Oh, you get so
I
much
know.
snow at your cabin." I'm like, but still just trying to kind of let them know, yeah, we are from Georgia, born and raised.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I can tell now. I mean, you told me before, so I knew that intellectually, but now I really feel it.
yeah, I I'm a little scared to get like on Instagram stories too much because my accent is so thick. I'm like, oh, people are gonna be mean to me.
Oh, no, but it's totally aligned with your cabin. That absolutely makes
Yeah.
sense to me. Now, if your cabin were in Alaska, I can see that being, like, a little bit more confusing because
Yeah.
that accent in Alaska just do not connect in my
No, and
brain. But
Alaska's such a like melting pot too. You get so many people from the South up here. It's so funny to me.
yeah,
The
I don't know a lot about Alaska, but it intrigues me for sure. Though I do wanna stick because I do think a big focus of what we're gonna talk about today is Instagram, because
Yeah,
you mentioned that you get asked about it a lot, and
yeah,
it feels like it's something that people are wanting to hear more about. I will be honest, I tend to shy away from it on
yeah,
the podcast. We have done a couple episodes
yeah,
where we talked about it more,
yeah,
specifically with the photographer Seth and Aaron, and I never know episode numbers for
yeah,
anyone listening.
yeah, yeah.
And then the other one is North Cascades Haven,
Yes,
which we talked a lot about
yes.
Instagram because she's
Well, because
grown a ton on
I was gonna say
Instagram.
she like kind of blew it up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which makes sense. Her cabin is like so beautiful.
yeah.
I
It's
love
amazing.
seeing it.
It's amazing.
But similarly, you do not have a small account, and I do think that when people see that, there's so many cabin accounts out there now.
Yeah,
I think people have questions of
yeah,
like, I want to use this for marketing. Marketing is more effective the more followers I have. So
yeah.
how do I grow
Well,
this
and
account?
it's such a tricky, and especially if you're starting out, like it's just super overwhelming in the beginning. And
Yeah.
so I think, and we all are looking at each other's accounts and like curious about what's working, what's not working. And so yeah, I mean, we just out like when we bought the cabin, we didn't necessarily think about making an Instagram account for it. But
That's what I was gonna ask. So it was not immediate.
no, no, like, I mean, we had a lot of work that we did on the inside because it was not a full remodel, but we did a lot. We put in a lot more money than we actually anticipated having to put into it in the very beginning. But afterwards, it was
That's
like,
pretty typical.
you know, are we gonna miss some of the market? Like, are we gonna miss, people seeing our cabin if we don't get on Instagram, because I've never been like big on Instagram. And so marketing, I mean, I was a school teacher for 12 years. Like I didn't know a lot about marketing, but wow, I will just say, I think it has a big impact to get your
Okay, so
cabin.
I wanna talk about that, but I
Yeah.
wanna go back just a little bit to that remodel. What
Yeah.
stage of the remodel was it that you were like, "Maybe this is beginning to feel more like a necessity and
Yeah.
less like a nice to have in terms of an Instagram?"
Yeah. So I think once we kind of got towards, I guess it's like when it felt started to feel finished. It was like, wow, this is really turning into something. We were getting like we were already excited about it, but we didn't buy the cabin with the idea of necessarily making it like a super fancy rental. We just wanted it to make some revenue when we weren't there, because the whole point in us getting the cabin was when we were there and we're visiting families staying for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, we just wanted a place to be.
Yeah.
So, we weren't like being like our family, being like, can we stay with you for 3 weeks? But we wanted to have a place. We wanted it to feel like a vacation because it was my husband's time off and our kids were, we were homeschooling at the time. And so, yeah, we just kind of all of a sudden was like, we should make an account for this. Like, we should see if we can, get it out there because Blue Ridge is very dense in vacation rentals. And
This Okay, so this is not something that I think many people know because I will be honest, the first time I'd ever even heard of Blue Ridge, Georgia was Spencer, which is a really interesting note about Instagram, right? Because I
yeah,
probably would never have thought of vacationing in
yeah,
Blue Ridge, Georgia,
yeah,
except Spencer built a cabin, put it on Instagram, grew his account,
yeah,
then I found out about Blue Ridge, Georgia.
exactly.
So, like, I love this idea that growth isn't just about vanity or metrics, it's about actually exposing
Right.
people to your place.
Well, yeah.
But anyway,
Well, so
so
and
now
that
there's a lot. Tell us about the area.
so I actually grew up there. I grew up in
In
Blue
Blue Ridge,
Ridge,
Georgia.
in Blue Ridge. Um, and at that time, we had the train. We had this beautiful train that would, people would come in the summer. There was a lot of visitors. Um, and so we kind of knew that it was touristy, I guess, because we saw the people like as kids. We saw my dad owned an antique store on Main Street. And so we saw how busy it would get at Labor Day. We saw that there was some like
Yeah.
arts in the park, and there were, so we knew it got busier at certain times of the year, but it has truly, and this probably is because of social media too, but it has blown up. Like it is so popular, and you get people from Chattanooga. You get a lot of people have retired, they moved to Florida, or they haven't retired yet, so they get a vacation rental and they go
Mhm,
back and forth. And so,
mhm.
having grown up there, it's an interesting perspective. And when we decided to move to Alaska, we sold our house. We sold the house that we were currently in, and we didn't have a place there for about the first year. And then we started to be like, we kind of want to have a place. And so we started looking. We love fly fishing. And so we looked at like several different cabins. They all were waterfront. That was for us. We were the ones that were like, we want to be on waterfront. And so we looked at all these cabins and houses that were on trout streams, and we kept going back to this one. And
So it was on the market for a while
it
then?
had been on the market for like, I shouldn't say a long time. They put it on the market in the summer for a pretty high price, and we just kind of disregarded it. We're like, yeah, we're not going to do that. And that was even before we moved to Alaska. And my husband, he's kind of obsessed with Trulia. Like, he's on it all the time. Like, just, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, no, we don't need to look at houses
A
in.
lot of people listening to this can relate.
Yeah. And so he's always looking and he's like, there was a price drop, And so we're scoping it out and we look and we just kept going back to this one. And it's just, I
Yeah,
think, it's like I told you, it had all the feels. You just walk in
yeah,
and it just felt like a place that would kind of feel like home, like a place where we would feel like we were getting away, and in
yeah.
the mountains. And so it just had all the feels. And so we went for it. And I mean, we feel
Now at this point, were you just shopping for yourselves? Were you just like, "Okay, we are picking out a house or a cabin solely for our family," Or had you considered renting it? So you had
Yeah.
that in your
So
mind
we had
too.
that in our mind too. And so
Okay.
there was this like there was we had like a type of cabin in our minds of what we wanted, but we also wanted it to have the ability to be a vacation rental. So we were looking
Yeah.
at things like accessibility. Um, how many bedrooms, and then you can get into the nitty gritty, like, do 2 bedrooms rent better than a 3 bedroom? Do
Right.
two
Or
bed
profit margin.
Exactly.
What does a 2-bedroom cost versus a 4-bedroom?
Yeah.
Can you make that much more off of a
Yeah,
4-bedroom to make it worth the
exactly.
monthly expense?
And then if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, it's like, oh, well, if you make it a 4 bedroom, can your septic system handle the amount of guests that are coming in
Right.
and staying in your cabin? So yes, we definitely looked at that. And I think I mentioned this too, that, because we live in Alaska, because we've never ventured into vacation rentals, we went with the comfort of a cabin management company there in Blue Ridge to basically just get our toes wet and just kind of be like, oh, okay, do we really want to go for this and manage this from Alaska, or do we just kind of want to take that cut and see how it goes? And so we're in the see how it goes phase, and it's going pretty good. And but
You
we,
need to take it over.
I know,
I'm not trying to be bossy, but I read
no,
your description and I was like, she has what it takes to run this, and it's not that much harder. I've
yeah,
done both.
yeah. Well, and it's an interesting perspective, right? Because having been a teacher, I'm kind of, a control freak. I've said it on air. Like, oh no, my husband's to be like, oh, it's been recorded. You've admitted
You
it.
have to be as a teacher,
No, we
though. I
do.
was
And
also a
so
teacher. You have to be.
it's just a matter of being, so there is that element of, oh, I would have done this or I would have done that. And I've
Yes.
relinquishing that amount of control has been hard for me. But at the same time, yeah, like when an emergency comes up, things do get taken care of, but it's a huge chunk. Like, it's a huge chunk. I mean,
Yeah.
you can ask around to various places, at least in Fannin County, you're looking at anywhere between a 20 to 30% cut of your
Yep.
profits. So, and there's a lot that goes into that. So we are at the tail end of that phase. So June will be,
Wait, can I ask you a quick
yeah,
clarifying question?
yeah,
When you say 20%, is that or 30%, is that of your gross revenue or of your profit? Because mine was of our gross
it's of your
revenue.
gross revenue.
Right. And that is a very I just think that's an important
It
note
is.
because 20% of your profits is way less than 20% of your gross
Yeah.
revenue. And in some cases, 20% of your gross revenue might be your profit.
Yeah.
You might not have
Yes.
anything left over for yourself.
That's exactly right. And so, and it's after, I really do feel like if you do it for a year, if you give yourself a year to see, like, first of all, is this something that you even want to take on? Second of all, does it feel manageable? Do you still enjoy your time when you're there, or do you feel consumed with like projects and things like that? For us, it's the first year, I would say the first several months, we were always working on the cabin when we went back. Like, there was
Right.
always something to do. The last time
Right.
that we went back was probably the first time we truly felt like, oh, okay, we've kind of figured it out. Like, things are
Yep.
gonna got a well-oiled machine going on now. But yeah, in the beginning, I feel like we were totally just trying it out, like being like, is this something that
Yeah.
we can do, like to do, want to do, and can we get it cash flowing? Can it
Yeah.
be something that will be, profitable? And from a marketing standpoint, I definitely feel like our cabin is marketable. Like, that was the other thing. It's like, well, you know, uh, there's so many cabins in Blue Ridge, but I do think that once you find something unique about your cabin, like, for example, I mean, Spencer's account was one of the first accounts. I think I was seeing his cabin on Instagram before we even had the cabin. And I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I love that cabin." Like, because we have another property over on Fighting Town, another trout stream, but we haven't built on it. And I've always loved Spencer's cabin. And so it's so funny because we are literally a mile away from Spencer's.
He told me
We're
that.
off the
Yeah.
same road. It's just the funniest thing. And so we know exactly like where he's at. And but you have to make yourself stand out in that market in Blue Ridge, or
This is
you,
interesting though, because I think we're talking about Instagram as a tool for marketing. And I think
yeah,
there's 2 cases where it makes a ton of sense. It's kind of a no-brainer for your cabin, and they're opposite ends of the spectrum.
yeah,
I started one for Cozy Rock, and not for Boone, or put no time. Our account for Boone has like, I don't know, 1,200 followers. I
Yeah.
spend no time on it
Yeah.
because there's so much traffic there. There's
Yeah.
so many people that like basically Airbnb, we've been
Yeah.
profitable since the very
Yeah.
beginning. But with Freeport, it's on the opposite end of that
Yeah.
spectrum. It it actually turns out I'm kind of incorrect and people do travel there, but I did
Yeah.
not think that they would in the winter months. So I was like, I need to bring them there for something else.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is with all these other cabins in the same area, I have to create like additional
Yeah.
ways for people to like prioritize my cabin. So
Sure.
it's interesting when I think about that spectrum, it's
Yeah.
really helpful on both ends. And
Yeah.
I think it can be helpful anywhere, but I think
Sure.
those are the two times where it makes a
Well,
lot of
and I think
sense.
so too, is, our cabin is not a tiny cabin. It's not an enormous, monstrous cabin, but the thing when we got it, we were like, oh, it's wheelchair accessible. That's great.
Mm,
People can come and have their parent, like grandparents could
yep.
come. Because we do have family gatherings there. When we lived in Georgia, all of the Thanksgivings, all the holidays, all the birthday parties were always at our house. And so, that was an adjustment for all of us when we moved to Alaska. So when we came back, it was another reason we wanted to have a place. And so,
Big enough to host everyone.
yeah, but not so big that it was unmanageable. Like, I remember walking into a cabin that we were looking at over on another trout stream near Ellijay called Turniptown Creek, and it was just 2 houses from Jimmy Carter's cabin. It was the coolest
Oh,
thing.
wow.
And but the cabin itself, when I walked into it, I was like, I'm so overwhelmed already with the space. And it was like
Because
just
it was so big?
so big. And it honestly, it was weird. It looked like a cabin from the outside, but was like a house on the inside. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And like, whereas this one,
So
it's
your
like,
brain is like, "Wait, I thought I just walked into a cabin, but I
yeah,
actually don't
it's
feel like
like
I'm in a
I
cabin."
felt like I was just in a house. And so beautiful property, like I mean, like I said, it's just like just a couple of cabins down. You could just look up the stream and see Jimmy Carter's cabin where he wrote his book. And it was just so dreamy, but it didn't feel right. And that's why
Yep.
we kept going back to, Water's Edge cabin. And it was just, you'd walk in and you'd smell the pine, and it's enough wood that it's like perfect. It's not like so overwhelming. And then it has the beams. And I love that it's 3 levels, it's not a huge cabin, but it feels spacious. And so when we do have birthday parties and there's kids running around everywhere, it's just perfect. And we love the deck
That's
space. I mean,
right.
so it was like, it just kind of checked all the boxes. It was at the top of our price range for what we wanted to spend, because we were looking at it very much as an investment. It was like,
Yep.
okay, this is going to take a couple of years to get this going. Is it going to be worth it? And so we just kind of went for it. We closed on Valentine's Day of 2023. And I feel like it's all happened really fast.
So
And
then you closed in 2023 in February, and then when did you said it wasn't towards the end that you thought you needed to create an Instagram account.
yeah.
When did you actually do
So
that?
I created the Instagram account at the end of April. So we had our contractor that we've used for a long time in Blue Ridge. He helped us with our previous house. He came in, and even though it was remodeled according to the real estate listing, we did a lot of things to, first of all, just get it safe for renters, right? Like just getting things to code and safe. And so by the end of April, things had really come along. We put in um, a huge fire pit. That was probably our biggest, well, I shouldn't say our biggest, but it was one of our biggest investments, because hot tubs are so expensive. That was probably our biggest investment, was the hot tub.
Yes.
So yeah, by about the end of April, I was like, I think I'm going to start an Instagram, like for our cabin.
I'm
I
pulling up your
mean,
Instagram now so I can see the things that you're talking
oh
about. Oh
yeah,
yeah, that fire pit is
yeah,
really
it's
big.
really big. And it was cool because I was like, we kind of knew we wanted it to just come straight off the deck. We wanted it to be like an extension, right? There was this, one of the reasons we loved this cabin was it was right on Stanley Creek, which is like one of our favorite trout streams. And
Yeah.
and we just wanted it to feel like everything was connected. And so when we had the landscaping guy come out, we're like, hey, we just want it to connect to the bottom steps of the deck and just go out and just be this huge, warm, just place. And so it took time. We had to be really patient because we would be in Alaska and then we would come back, and then we would be in Alaska and we
Right.
would come back. And
Right.
the fire pit, it just, when that went in, I was like, I think we're on to something. Like,
Yeah.
this feels good. Like, I feel like,
So is that when you started the Instagram? You were like,
yeah,
I need to share.
I was like,
Okay.
this is cool. I'm excited. Things were just really coming together. We had painted the cabin and it just looked so beautiful. We got the hot tub in. And so there were a lot of things that just came together. And so yeah, the end of April, I started the account, and definitely did not know what I was doing. And I was just like kind of flying blind. And we didn't even list the cabin with Escape to Blue Ridge. That's our management company right now, until the second week of July, I think, because I remembered missing the 4th of July. So basically, we missed like the whole like first part of the summer just because we were still finishing like lots of little
Yeah.
things along the way. And
Yeah.
we had to get things up to code. We had to do our fire safety. And there were things like the management company was like, you need to do these things in order for us to list your cabin. So, one of the things that, like they wanted us to have like a certain amount of TVs, and, you need to have a hot tub, and a lot of these
Oh,
cabin, yeah,
interesting.
yeah, a lot of these cabin management companies, I don't know if a lot of people realize this, is that you either need to have a view, a beautiful mountain view, or you need to be waterfront. And if you don't have one of those two things, it's like, either they're not going to list you, or
Yeah.
you're just not going to like stand out enough, I guess. But for us, it
Yeah.
was like, well, we're waterfront. Not everybody's going to go trout fishing, but we do have a stream. But that was really more for us. And so I think
Right.
it's a very competitive market. And we're in an area, and Spencer's probably he's in this area too, but we're in an area called the Asker Adventure area. And so it's cool because the road that goes right in front of our cabin is actually the Benton Mackay like hiking trail. And so you'll see people walk past the cabin with their backpacks, and it's an extension of the trail until you get back on it. So it's just the road. And so we have
Yeah.
all kinds of just really cool access. We're right next to Falls Branch Falls, so there's hiking, there's biking. Um, we feel like in the summer, hopefully, because it's our first summer with having the cabin listed, that we'll get an influx of people who are coming like just for like adventure stuff too.
Right.
And so,
Right. I want to go back really quick though to what you were saying about the property management
yeah,
company being really picky about what you have to have listed.
yeah,
And I want to clarify one thing, and that is there are property management companies who all they do is just literally manage your property.
right,
And this is similar to the Blue Ridge Mountains in North
yeah,
Carolina too. Then there are property management companies that will manage your property, but also market properties.
mm,
And they have extensive email lists that they
yeah,
send, and they have a website where folks can go. It's
sure,
basically like another Airbnb, but local
yeah,
for that area. And so just for anyone who's hearing like, oh no, I can't use a property manager because I have to have these things.
yeah,
The one that you use is the second one
yeah,
when it's the first one. So there are companies who don't care about what you have
right,
or whatever, because they're just doing the logistical back end
yeah,
work. If they're trying to market it and get people to book it
that's
on their
right.
website, then they do care
Yes,
because
then
they
they
want
do.
it. They want people to know
Yeah.
that when they come to their website, you can find a certain
Yes,
quality.
exactly. And
So I just
so,
want to distinguish those.
and I think that that's a great distinction because, and for us, it was like, well, okay, we knew we were looking for a place with waterfront. However, I'm all about get me out into the woods. I don't have to have a view. Just put me out in the woods. Like,
Yeah.
I very well could have, we could have found a cabin that we loved that wasn't waterfront or didn't have a view.
Yeah.
And so that, I think they kind of set that precedent because the market is so dense. They just have to kind of start at a certain level, or else they would just
Yeah.
have so many cabins that, and when they do market it, because yes, they do have an Instagram, they do have a Facebook, they do send out newsletters. They do market, your cabin, but it's not, to me, it's not marketed enough that it gets your cabin seen enough. Does that make sense?
Right.
And that, I mean, and
Which
that's
is
and
why
that's
you
not a
wanted to
jab at
bring.
them, right? That's not a jab at them, but it's also like, wait, we got to kind of get it out there a little bit more than that. And it's been noticed. Like, they have emailed us and they have said, whoa, like, you've already got so and so bookings for 2024. Great job. We want to adjust your price, you
Oh,
know?
good.
Yeah. So it's, yeah, I really do believe that the Instagram makes a big difference because it just gets your property seen more. And the more it
Right.
gets seen, the more that people are clicking on your booking link. And whether they book or not, they might share it. They might tag a friend.
Right.
It gets
Right.
saved. So it's marketing. And that's the thing
Right.
is, I, like I said, I'm still learning, but I do think that we just kind of live in a day and age that if, whether you're on Airbnb or whether, you're on VRBO or if you're with a cabin management company, I still don't think you should just rely on a cabin management
On one.
company or just
Yeah.
on one. Um,
And that's the value that I think people often miss when they complain about Airbnb fees and VRBO fees. And I get it, the fees are high,
yeah,
and they do provide practical things like taking in money so that you don't have to,
yeah,
like, worry about that, but the other thing they do is put you in front of a lot of eyeballs. Like,
exactly.
every time I watch TV, I see a VRBO commercial or an Airbnb commercial,
Yeah,
and they're bringing people into a different way of traveling, which
exactly.
is, "Oh, maybe next time instead of a hotel, I'm gonna go to
Right.
Airbnb," which then puts your property in front of them, and that is
Exactly.
part of the value of what you're paying for.
Yeah.
And if you're managing it yourself, then you don't need to give a 20% to anyone. Well, that is what your service fee is doing. It's
Yeah.
paying that
Exactly.
platform
Yeah.
for all the advertising.
Well, and there's cost. I mean, no matter how you slice it, you're still going to be paying somehow or another to get your cabin out there. I know with the particular company that we're using, they don't put they have like their actual direct booking page that they use, but they also put all their cabins on VRBO. So like,
I noticed that
yeah,
on your
so
listing.
and that's there are a lot of cabins that are listed with this particular agency that either A, don't have an Instagram, or B, they don't put the VRBO link. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is that there are people who like to just book with VRBO because, there's Marriott. I think some of the like they actually have like benefits and discounts that you can get if you,
Because now they've merged
because now,
Booking.com, same thing. Yeah.
exactly. And so I think, and that's something that I've learned is I'm like, okay, how many different ways can we get our cabin seen? And
Yeah.
so we even pay a small amount every month to Cabin Land, and we have our like listing on Cabin Land, and so
Didn't even know you could do that.
it's just, I mean, and it's not like we're getting bookings every single day, but yeah, there are people who have
You're like, the
messaged
more
me,
eyes I can get on it, the more booked it's gonna be.
and it,
I wanna go back
yeah,
to something you said, though, which was you said you're gonna pay for it no matter what, and I think that's true, but this is why I find Instagram so
mhm,
powerful, because I feel like it is kind of leveling that playing field
I
because it
agree.
is the one way to get eyes on your cabin that doesn't have to cost anything.
I
Now for me,
mhm,
I'm not at my cabin, I pay photographers regularly, so
yeah,
it does cost me something to
yeah,
create the kind of content I'm creating. But as reels became more popular,
yeah,
the need for photographers for me has
mhm,
gone down because the only thing I use it for is the cover photo, which still matters. It's the
right,
same as a different post every day,
sure,
but we can create more of the content
yeah,
ourselves, and that is free. It's not free, your time is worth something and you're spending a lot of
yes,
time, but anyone who wants to learn it and is willing to put in the
exactly.
time can
Well, and
utilize it.
that's a really interesting thing because in the beginning, I never thought, oh, I'll be creating the content for this cabin. That was never on our radar. And after a couple of like, I don't know, 2 or 3 months of just like, scrolling through Instagram and just seeing like what the quality of the content is, like, is it reels? Is it carousels? Like, what is it? I was like, we could do this. Like, we
Yeah.
love being at the cabin. Why don't we just start sharing more of it? And I think we had our first reel go viral. And I was like, what is happening? And all of the reel was just this still video of a super relaxing, like rainy day. And I
Mhm.
was like, it's so simple. Why, don't overthink it, don't overcomplicate it. Usually, whatever you enjoy about your cabin is what other people enjoy about being at the cabin and just that culture of relaxing and the feels that we all get when we're at our own cabin. So I was like, okay, let's just roll with it. And then it was like that's when I kind of started figuring out that, wait a second, like there's something that people want to see when they click follow on a cabin page. They want to feel like they're there, like they're at the cabin. And so slowly it became more of a, okay, I'm not just like marketing a cabin in Blue Ridge. It's like you're marketing a vibe, you're marketing a feel, you're marketing like this is what you're, and it's true because when we go to the cabin, we feel all these things. And that's why
Right.
we love going there. That's why we bought a cabin. And even though I grew up in the mountains, we didn't like live in a cabin, but I always loved, there were things that I loved about where we lived. We had the wood stove. Like I loved campfires. And so it's, I think that, you can make marketing very, very complicated. And I did that in the beginning and I made it really hard. And I was like, why am I on my phone doing this for,
How did you make it hard?
I think I just made it hard because I was overthinking it. Like I didn't know what to share. I didn't know
Yeah.
how to share our cabin because you
Yeah.
can see, like, oh, look, a stay in the mountains. And it's true. Like if you're just looking and you might find the perfect cabin, but I think the thing that's really powerful about Instagram and about Reels especially is that it does have a way of like capturing emotions. And then all of a sudden
Yeah.
you're like, you feel like you're there. Um,
Right. I wonder how many people listening to this have ever booked a cabin after seeing a post or a reel that says book a stay at a cabin versus how many people listening have ever booked a stay at a cabin after seeing just a short clip that takes you there and
yeah,
makes you feel like you're there. Like, I
yeah.
don't actually think you have to say the words. I think
Mm-mm,
to your point, you're
no,
just trying to share the energy
yeah,
that that place holds,
yeah,
and whatever it holds for you is gonna be exactly what sells it to other people.
yeah.
And just how do you share that?
Well, and the thing is people don't really like, you're going to the mountains or you're going to spend time with your friends or your family. It's not just all about the cabin, but there is this just entire experience that, like for us that we love. Like when we
Mhm.
think about going to the cabin, it's our kids playing in the creek. It's sitting around the fire and making s'mores. It's waking up and it's
Mhm.
quiet and you're having coffee and you're snuggling with your pup. Like it's, I think, yeah, in the beginning, I was like, trying way too hard. And it's one of, you have those cringy moments when you're first looking at like the quality of what you're sharing. And it's like, wait, I was not completely off, but I was missing the mark because I was just trying too hard. Like it's the things that we love about being at the cabin are really actually really simple. And the things that, when we look back at our time, like this last time we were there, our oldest, I mean, he spent hours just catching trout and just fishing, and our youngest was just turning over rocks and playing in the stream. And we got to take our dog with us the last time. And so he was playing out in the creek. And so it's, most of our time actually isn't physically inside the cabin, even though we love it.
That's
It's,
interesting.
a lot of that time is spent outside. And so,
What was the
yeah.
turning point for you? What was the turning point where you went from, like, marketing is hard and intimidating and to, like, "Oh, no, this is actually really simple." What caused that? Do you remember the moment?
I kind of do. I kind of do. It was about 6 months after I had, made the account. All of a sudden, I realized that the less time if I just would quit overthinking it, like if I would just take some content that we had and just keep it simple and just shoot it out there, click post, those were the ones that would just go, right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, why was I making this so hard? And so, because I would end up filling up all the drafts in my Instagram, and I'm like, why? Why do I have all these? Like, why don't I just share this stuff? And so, I think I kind of forced myself because I was like, oh, I'm spending way too much time like trying to create content. And so, I think once I just started keeping it simple, and and noticing that, yeah, like the length of the reels matters, but sometimes, if it's something that does go a little bit longer, I think that the algorithm is a little bit finicky, but I think you just have to have a variety. You can't
Yeah.
stick to one thing for too long.
Yeah.
um
Okay, this is really great because when I think about teaching new things, I always think about how first you have to have the right mindset, then you have to learn the right things, and then you have to develop the skills. So you've started us off with the mindset, which is don't overthink it and just share what you love about the cabin. And I think if you have the right mindset, then it gets you one step closer. But
Yeah.
you still need the knowledge about
Yeah.
Instagram, and you kind of shared some hints at some of those. But why don't you share like the top 3 things that you think people should know about Instagram if they're thinking about starting an
Yeah.
account or trying to take their account more seriously?
Well, I think that I've probably spent an entirely too much time researching things like keywords and hashtags and links, you know, carousels. I think all of those things have their place. And I think for me, once I kind of got into a rhythm and kind of like, it still goes back to not overthinking it. I used to create a new hashtag list with
Hold on, I'm
every
gonna
single
push you a
thing.
little bit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna push you. I want you to share actual things that you've learned because I think that's gonna be more helpful. So
Okay.
you just mentioned keywords, hashtags, carousels. Pick the top 3 of those or anything you've learned and tell us like actual things that you think people should know that they might not know that have
Oh,
helped you the most.
so I think that if you start with hashtags, for example, okay,
Okay.
I'm going to do hashtags and keywords because for me, in the notes on my phone, in the last 3 or 4 months, have done an experiment where I haven't changed them. I have used
Okay.
the same hashtags and the same keywords. Now, the question is what should my hashtags be? What should my keywords be? And I think
Mhm.
for cabins and for vacation rentals, what does your cabin offer? So like for us, like we are waterfront. So we're in the
Mhm.
North Georgia mountains. So we are a cozy cabin. We are a rustic cabin.
Mhm.
You know what? And the whole point of hashtags and keywords is so the algorithm knows where do I push this content. And
Yes.
I
Good.
think that um, and somewhere along the way, I had watched a video and they're like, stop changing your hashtags and stop changing your keywords because it's confusing the algorithm. And I was like, oh, okay.
Oh,
I
interesting.
was like, oh, okay, great. Maybe I'll just try this. And so I kind of started just turning it into an experiment. And so for several weeks, I just didn't change them. And so in the notes, I just like typed out, I don't, I mean, if there was a number, I would say 10 hashtags. Now, that's not necessarily perfect. I might change if it's springtime, I might say springtime. If it's winter at the cabin, then I might say, winter getaway. I might
Yep.
have something specific for the season, but there are certain hashtags that I've used for months now that I haven't changed. And it might be, a cozy getaway. What is going to direct a person on Instagram? What hashtag might they be searching for to find my cabin? Because at the
Yep.
end of the day, you're trying to get your cabin rented. Okay,
Yep.
like you are. I mean, you want to share it with people. It's a special place that you enjoy yourself. And so you're picking your keywords, and my hashtags and my keywords are not that different from each other, but they're also not identical. So,
Okay.
so I here the last few months, I've just been using 10, maybe 12 hashtags and then maybe 8 or 9 keywords. And I mean, and they're very specific to, I guess you could say, our little niche, like, where we are on Instagram,
Yep.
what kind of things are people looking for when they see our account. And so I
Okay,
did,
so this is good. So I'm hearing know that you should be using hashtags and keywords to help find your people. So
yeah,
those hashtags and keywords should be tailored
yeah,
for the people who are looking
yeah.
for the things that you have. And then the second one was don't overuse them. So maybe 10 or less is the right
Yeah, I
number.
think so because and I know you'll see videos and reels and people are like, well, hashtags are out or keywords are in, and I kind of just what I've noticed is that I do believe now that the algorithm has to have some time to figure out where you want your account to go.
Yeah.
And you have to identify that, right? Like, who is your market? Like
Mhm.
for your cabin in Maine, it's slightly different. Yes, we're both
Mhm.
vacation rentals, but you're not going to be hashtag North Georgia Mountains. you're going to be
No.
hashtag May, free
Or
for May.
hashtag family travel. Like, we're more couple travel, right? So
Exactly.
it's like finding your
So,
people.
and that is the truth. So, like for us, we might say family getaway. We might say, and we can be a couples getaway, but for us, what we get is multiple couples. So we get like three couples who want to go hang
Like a
out
friends
together,
trip.
a
Yeah.
friends trip. And so,
Uh-huh.
yes, it takes some time. So I think I spent like one afternoon or something, and I just was like, okay, I'm going to do some homework. I'm going to I'm going to really try to not just make up hashtags. Like I really want this to serve a purpose. And once I kind of thought about it and started looking at it as more of a business mindset than just the rat race of how many likes or follows we're getting, when I started looking at it more of as a business, that's when things really started to kind of turn around. I was like, wait,
Mhm.
I actually can navigate what gets seen on my account. I can do that. Um,
Yep.
and so,
Because
yeah,
this is exactly, I mean, in my full-time job, I consult businesses on marketing strategies, specifically video, and this is what we talk about all the time is
yeah,
brand identity and target market. If you
yeah,
don't know who your brand is and how you want people to feel about it
yeah,
and who you're trying to reach, then
yeah,
whatever marketing you do is not going to be effective. So
exactly.
it sounds like the third thing that people should know is who they are
Yeah,
and who they're trying to reach. And if you don't know that, and that's not even Instagram specific, that
no,
honestly is going to help you with all, but it will
yeah.
really help with Instagram so that the algorithm knows where to put you.
Well, and it's consistency too, right? Like, so you have all these
Okay, well,
hashtags.
now you're moving to okay, I'm gonna pause you because now I wanna move to skills. So those are things that you can, like,
Yeah.
intellectually know, but the next one are skills, so things that you actually have to do in
hmm
order to be effective at Instagram. So it sounds like your first one is consistency. Talk to us about that.
Well, and I think so consistency in, not saying you have to post every day. I'm not saying that. I don't believe that because there was a weekend where it was just crazy. I was taking pictures for an event and I just did not get on the account. I think that's okay, but be consistent, be reliable, right? Like you could take a day or
Yes.
two off stories, but if you see that you have 50 to 100 people viewing your stories, you have a following. You have people who want to see your stories. I mean, to me, 10 to 20 is a following, 5 to 10
I
is a
know, I
following.
agree.
I'm like, people are clicking on your circle. Be
Yeah.
consistent. And
I love you calling it reliable and not consistent though. Not that you're right about consistency,
yeah,
but we hear that so much, it feels like pressure.
yeah,
When you say be reliable, it feels like I'm a friend, right? I wanna be
yeah,
reliable for my friends. I wanna show up when I say I'm gonna show up,
yeah.
and so I like that word choice there. I think it gives it a slightly different feel.
It's because you do start to feel like you have kind of like a little Instagram family, like you've got
Yeah,
people that reliably comment on your things and you start to feel connected. Like that's the power of
yeah,
social media. That is what I believe gets you bookings. People feel connected to your account. And so
yeah,
consistency also in when someone looks at let's just say that your cabin pops up in their feed and they go to your account, but like your hashtags didn't really like match or your content doesn't really,
mm,
it's not consistent. So, yes, if I use a hashtag like cozy rustic getaway, well, I better have a cozy rustic getaway when they go over, or for example, like
yes,
pup friendly. Like if you're dog friendly, you need to have some dog friendly content on your account. Like people want
yeah,
to know if they really can take their pets there. We don't overshare our kids, but I do like to show kids enjoying their time,
yeah,
at our cabin too. Recently I shared a little picture of my mom having coffee and our dog's up on the couch with her. Like even my mom is on our Instagram because
yeah,
I mean, we have all of our family there. So
yeah,
consistency in that too. But, yes, the stories, I never used stories on a personal account, but I do believe that they do have some marketing power
yeah.
in
Okay,
your cabin
I'm
life.
gonna pause you. Let's move to 2 other skills. So things that people should learn how to do in
Mhm.
order to effectively capitalize on Instagram.
I think that, so pay attention, like use your insights, like actually go in. And that's
Mm,
actually a really powerful thing. Another thing I did not do for the first I mean, at least few months. I did not know how to utilize the Instagram insights on my profile. Um, they
So what
probably,
should folks learn how to do with them?
I think you need to look and see, okay, you have a reel that's performing really well. Why? You know, how is it different? Like analyzing your own work,
Mhm.
critiquing your own
Yes.
work.
Yes.
And I think that once I started critiquing my own stuff, I was like, that's when things kind of started changing. Like, wow, like that first reel I was telling you that went viral, like I never in a million years would have thought that that would have been the kind of content that would have been more successful.
Yes.
So it is, you are experimenting, and don't be afraid to experiment, right? It's okay if you have a reel that's a flop. That's okay. Why did it flop? And then move on and keep
Yep.
testing things out. I that once I kind of developed that skill, it took the fear out of it a little bit. Like it didn't seem as
Yeah.
scary. It was like, oh yeah, this is our page, like let's see how it works.
And if it flops, then I'm going to learn something from it.
Right.
So what I'm actually hearing you say is the skill isn't learning how to use the insights. The skill is really like being able to self-reflect and
True.
analyze your own content, which I think can
Absolutely.
be hard for a lot of
I
people.
think it
But if
is.
you get good at that, you're going to get better fast.
Yeah, and I think so. Well, and you could have content that may not be successful in the beginning, but if you just, it could be one little tweak. It could be a, this is
Mhm.
crazy, but it could just be that maybe you didn't have the right sound. Maybe you didn't have the right trending sound. I could not believe how effective it has been to do a little bit of research on trending sounds.
Mhm.
But that's just part
It
of it.
sounds like you're moving to a third skill. I love this. So
I
I'm
might be
hearing
moving to a third skill.
that's great. I think the
Yeah.
third one, and I think this is an important one, is using trending audio. So tell us, what did you learn and what do you do now with trending audio that has helped you see the growth?
So my first piece of advice is don't use the first trending sound that you see unless it feels super like true to your page. This kind of goes back to consistency too. I'm actually really
Yeah.
picky about the sounds that I pick for my page now because I needed to kind of vibe with my content.
Your
And
brand identity.
yeah, I mean, consistency, like,
Yeah.
a reliable vibe on your page. Not saying you can't like shake it up and go crazy, but for the most part, what I have found successful by looking at insights and seeing what reels do really well and which ones don't is a certain kind of trending audio, trending sounds that just do well with our page. Yeah, so you have to kind of, your brand identity, don't let it be confusing to your followers. It can be. And so
And I would say a great example we've seen recently of that is Beyoncé's new country song. Everybody was using it. And the problem is it
yeah,
has a distinct feel that
yes,
isn't aligned necessarily with everyone's brand identity.
I
And so
agree.
I'm not saying don't use that, but I saw that one showing up in a lot of places where I was like, "Huh, this country feel doesn't really make sense to what I had previously felt about this brand,"
Do you see
and
how
made
it
me a little
throws you off though? It throws you off.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying people will be like, I got to unfollow that person now. However, it goes back to being reliable.
Yeah.
They start to count on your page for something.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay, but I still wanna push a little bit on this trending audio in
okay,
the sense of, like, can you give people who don't even know what trending audio is,
okay,
can you give them some tips of how they would develop this skill?
okay. So I've done a lot of research on this too, more time than I care to admit. What I have found effective is when you go into the tabs at the bottom and you click on the little video symbol and you're just kind of looking through whatever Instagram thinks you kind of want to see, like you're looking through reels that pop up, you might hear a song that you like. Okay. You can click on that song. There's a little arrow. If it's trending, it has the arrow.
There you go.
I don't always use a song that has a trending arrow, but if you click on that trending arrow, it's going to take you to like, this list. Okay. I used to always pull songs from that list, but what I found was that if you click on audio that you like, and let's say you click on that song and it pulls up the artist up at the top and then all the reels that have used it, if you click
Mhm.
on a variety of like reels that use that song, Instagram is smart. The algorithm is smart. What it starts to realize is that you're looking for trending audio. You're looking for audio with low views. And so, what it does is if you do this enough, if you spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes a day looking at a variety of reels that have, uh, they're trending, maybe pre trending, it starts pushing audio to
Yes.
you. And
The audio that they know you want, and it makes your life easier. But you just glossed over perhaps the most important part of trending audio, because I think you take it so for granted now because you use it all the time, and that is low number of uses.
yeah,
Why does that matter?
well, so I realized that if you go to that first page, like if you click the trending arrow and you go to that first page, a lot of those actually don't have like a low number of views. And so what I have found is that some of our reels that have gone viral, some of them never had the arrow and some of them had as low as 250 views. Do not take those for granted, especially if that song truly is consistent with like the vibe of your page. If it really matches it, like I say, use it.
Yeah.
Because anything with really low views, when they click on that sound or they hear it, um, you're gonna be there. Like you're gonna be on that page with all those other reels, or people are gonna, Instagram, like I said again, is smart. It's gonna say, wow, this song or this trending audio has only got 200 views. Let's push this out. A lot of people, this account is using this that might have a decent amount of followers. Let's push it out, and then all of a sudden, you're like, a lot of people are seeing your reel that maybe didn't see the reel prior to
Okay,
that.
and let's pull the curtain all the way back, guys, because I think a lot of people don't talk about this because this is from my experience, the easiest way to grow your account fast. So I
Mhm.
think some people don't talk about it because they don't want you to know. So
Yeah.
let's pull the curtain all the way back. When it comes to trending audio, think about a trend like on a graph. Like
Mhm.
it starts and it's easing its way up and then it hits the peak and then it still has to come back down.
Yeah.
So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get trending audio when it's on that first
Here.
part. And the
Right.
reason for that is because
Yeah.
it's gonna start trending and you're gonna
Yeah.
go up and it's go crazy, but
Yeah.
you're still that lifespan from start to finish. I have a reel right
Yeah.
now that I made over a month ago that is hitting a second wind
Yep.
because it's been riding that
I agree.
entire trend.
Yep.
And so if you see one that's trending and it has 950,000 views, what that tells you is that
Mhm.
it's been trending for a while and it's
Yep.
on the back end.
Yep.
It doesn't mean it won't work for you, but it's going to work for a very short amount of time. You
Yep.
want to catch it on the front end of
Well,
that.
and something else that's important, and this is a little hard to explain if you can visualize it. When you click on a trending audio, it gives you the artist, and then it gives you all the reels underneath that have used it. If you look at the original, if the original has more than 1 million views and it's pre-trending or trending, use that audio
Okay,
because
amazing. I did not know that.
because that person, that artist creates reliable content. And if they're
Okay.
always, it's all interconnected, right? That is a good indicator that that audio is probably going to do well. And
It's all data, guys. The algorithm is AI.
it
It's not a
is,
human. It's
it is
just it so it has
totally.
to operate off of
So
data.
if you kind of flip the switch and you're like, no, 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 I'm not going to be scared by this. I'm not going to be intimidated by this. Use it to your advantage. There's a lot of audio out there that you got to look for it, and you do have to spend some time on it. At first, I was like, "This is
You
silly.
do.
Like, I know this is
Yeah.
dumb." Like, I was like, "I don't want to have to spend time listening to all this audio." But then I realized, like, no, wait, it doesn't take that much time. Spend 5 minutes a day, look at some trending
Mhm.
audios, and then it's like magically all this audio
It's
starts getting pushed into my page and I'm
way
like,
easier.
wow, thank you, and I'm
Mhm.
not having to spend as much time. And so yeah, I think trending audio, even though you might not want to admit it, it's important. I think that that's
It is.
just part of marketing on Instagram. And the argument of reels versus carousels or short reels or long reels, I really think variety is the key. We tend to have reels do better on our page, but I've seen some people's page do really well with carousels.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Okay,
but
as we're wrapping up, I wanna sum up the big mindset shift, I think, that you talked about not taking it as seriously, but what I really heard was like viewing it as a business. When
Hmm.
you started to view your page as a business
Yeah.
is when that flip really switched for
Yeah.
you. And then in terms of what people should know, they should know to use hashtags and keywords. They should know to maybe not use more than 10, so less than that.
Yeah.
And maybe most importantly, they should know their brand identity. Who are
Yeah.
you? What makes you different and who are you trying to reach?
Yeah.
Then when it comes to skills, the things that you really need to practice to get good at and
Mhm.
work hard on doing, I heard reliability, which
Yeah.
was my favorite. I heard trending audio, and then what was the second one you said? Hold on, I'm gonna think of it. Oh, and the second skill was getting good at analyzing your own content,
Yeah.
using analytics to analyze your
Yeah.
own content. And so every time you're making content, you're using what you've
Yeah.
learned from the last one so that you keep getting better.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, and you're, with like with your being consistent and just stories, I think they're underestimated. I think if, I pay a lot of attention to the little bar up at the top of mine. And so I think if you just are present, if you're true to your brand and you're present and you're there, people are going to keep coming to your page. And then
Yeah.
that means more
And
bookings.
remembering That's right. They're serving different purposes. So
Yeah.
all of this goes back to, we've talked about this before, a sales funnel. And
Mhm.
so to get people in the funnel, they have to find you. And that's
Yeah.
where trending audio and reels are really effective to get new eyes
Yeah.
on your page. But new eyes aren't going to book immediately after finding you. So the
Yeah.
next step is, how do I get them to know, like, and trust
Yeah.
me? And that's where I think stories are really helpful. You're not going to find new people via stories, very rarely.
Very
Um,
rarely. Yes.
but you will build that trust and relationship with them, so that it might be a long sales funnel. We just had someone book, and he had emailed and said, he's been
Mhm.
following for 2 or 3 years
Yeah.
and finally booked. So it isn't about that necessarily immediate conversion,
Yeah.
but over time. Okay, we have 2 minutes left, and I
Yeah.
want you to tell me, what do you think makes a cabin a cabin? But thank you, first of all, thank you for all that insight on Instagram, because I think you're right.
Yeah.
A lot of people are asking these questions and want to know, and that was a really helpful perspective. But to wrap up, when you think about, and we kind of touched on this earlier
Yeah.
with the one that didn't feel like a cabin, but what do you think makes a cabin a cabin?
I think what makes a cabin is the way you feel as soon as you walk in the door.
Mhm.
And it's like, for us, it's that immediate, like, it just it just feels good and it feels safe. And it immediately feels like
Mm,
we have gone to a place where, I don't know, the worries just somehow or another, they just kind of melt away. And
yeah.
it I mean, cozy doesn't quite do it, but I definitely think like just a place of comfort,
Mhm.
and it's soothing, and it feels, I mean, really for me, it does feel like kind of a haven, like a safe place, like,
I love that
okay.
word safe. We've never heard that
Mhm.
before.
Yeah, so
Misty, this was such a treat. Thank you so much for
yeah,
joining
it was
us.
so fun. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks so much for joining us. And if you liked what you heard, feel free to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or share some of your favorite parts over on Apple Podcast. If you have feedback or suggestions for the future, you can also find me on Instagram at Cozy Rock Cabin. Looking forward to next week.